And boom, we're live. And good evening. And here we are on a cold evening in Scotland. And tonight, well, I want to just kick straight into it because I know we've got some technical issues and data sort of issues with my connection tonight with Colorado. So we'll just step into it straight away. And well, first of all, how you doing tonight, Lee?
I'm doing well. We had a few technical difficulties, but hopefully you can hear me all right, and we can get started.
That's perfect, man. Now, I think the best place to sort of really start with this. I mean, you're really the best person to really give an overview of what the whole of this podcast is about tonight, and this whole conversation is going to be about. So, I think the best way to kick it off really is just to start with the really basic question and just tell me, to tell people who are listening, what is Lobbyvoice?
Lobbyvoice is sort of a cross between Change.org and Kickstarter. And basically, and there's a few different websites out there that actually have issues, that crowdfund issues. This is a little different. This is crowdfunding issues and attaching the values to the blockchain and Bitcoin. And so the idea is to have anybody be able to use whatever fiat or currency that they're using, and then have a third party be able to transfer it over, like BitNation or something like that, into the blockchain. And the main reason is so that each vote has a value attached to it, and the value can be it can go back to the user that starts the issue or pledges towards the issues, if the milestones aren't met, and those milestones are all they're all settings that can be made by the user. And they can also the idea is that it would have a wiki attached to it, so that each time an issue is made, there's an open forum on it, and then there can be open consensus voting, utilizing some of the I'm thinking some of the dApps that are on the Ethereum platform, the Frontier network. I think that's something that I'm interested in as far as the voting goes. But the whole point of Lobbyvoice is to get people to rally behind the things that they care about, and potentially have large values, maybe in the millions, maybe even in the billions, around a particular issue. And it's really democracy without parties or without left or right or whatever side. It's really just about the issues. And if someone cares about those issues, they can pledge against them, or they can pledge for them, anywhere from $1 to $100. And we think we want to put a limit on the amount of pledges one person can put in, and it would have to be attached to an ISP, and maybe some sort of right now it's the idea is to have it have the ability to be anonymous, but also if someone wanted credit, then they can be themselves. So once the values are there, the choices are to go with the recommendations of, like, the wiki, the open forum, or abandon the project and refund all the money. Of course, 100% of the money isn't refunded back to the users because of Bitcoin transactions and that kind of thing. All cost a small amount of fees for confirmations and things like that. Everyone knows whenever you're on an exchange and you're exchanging Bitcoin from one currency to another, that there's a small fee, and usually it's pretty small when it comes to Bitcoin. So the choices are either take the money and lobby against the government or with the government, and use the money to pay off the politicians, or the other route really is this route where, and let me pull this up real quick here. I have an example where once the issue is funded and everybody decides, well, we can either do that, or we can create a DOA, a decentralized autonomous organization, based on the idea. So if it was something like an insurance company, I have an example like Bob. He's fed up here. I'll just read the example. Bob, excuse me. Bob, a Lobbyvoice user, creates a issue where he would like a law passed such that insurance companies would use transparency and be not for profit, and the money that he pays in as premiums, if not used through claims, could be apportioned back. So Bob pledges $1 and posts his issue on Lobbyvoice. Bob adjusts the settings for 6 months milestone to reach 10,000 supporters, all pledging at least $1. Bob's issue attracts applicants to begin to brainstorm and create on the open wiki. It becomes clear that the applicants can create a decentralized autonomous organization that handles insurance, which is capable of operating within the terms set out according to Bob's written issue. So Bob becomes excited about the prospects of creating a decentralized autonomous corporation run in a completely transparent way with terms that Bob is agreeable to when choosing insurance. He then pledges $99 more of his own money, prompting other pledgers to join in. Another milestone is reached, say 100,000 pledges, all varying in amounts between $1 and $100, finally reaching enough to equal the amount of the proposed plan by the applicants. And through a transparent democratic insurance organization. And instead of changing or creating any new laws, Bob has simply made the issue obsolete and the method of insurance as well. Popular consensus and the law of the value becomes the law of the land. And what I mean by that is that it's not necessarily necessary to fight corporations or make them, create laws and make them obey laws and things of that nature. It's just as easy to create a new system and create a new infrastructure and then begin using that, and then ignoring the other corporations. These decentralized platforms can be owned by the people that buy it, that pledge their money, and these let's say the insurance company, it's managerless. It's all run by an autonomous API or artificial intelligence, essentially, all running on the blockchain. All the money is on open ledgers. So I guess the idea behind Lobbyvoice is to create opportunities for solutions by creating new infrastructure that people can pledge their money. They can and usually it would start out with just an idea. I don't like in the United States, I might not like Obamacare, so I might decide, wouldn't it be better if we had something different? And I don't know what that different thing might be, but I'm willing to pledge $1 for a wiki to be started and brainstorming to be happening, and things might coalesce, and if they don't, then the issue just goes away. And there could be 100 or 1,000 or even 1 million issues. I think right now there's at least 1 million bills trying to be passed through the U.S. Congress. I mean, you'd spend the rest of your life trying to read those bills and figure out what's in them. So Lobbyvoice, I think, has two different directions it can go in. Whether it be to actually use the money to lobby government, just like lobbyists do. Lobbyists can be paid, and I think that's sort of a waste of time. I'm really attracted to the decentralized autonomous organization model. I don't know. Did I cover?
No, that's perfect. I mean,
question?
well, no, I mean, this is where I think we're fascinating, and I say often, I repeat myself over and over again, but I do think we're living in the greatest of days. And the reason I say this is because there seems to be a synergy of great ideas at the moment, all converging
I'm
on
not
this.
hearing you.
Can you hear me now, my friend? Can you hear me, Travis? We seem to be having technical difficulties. I can now see you, Travis, but can you hear me? Can you hear me? Travis, if you can hear me, my friend, you need to turn your mic on. Can you hear me
Can you
now,
hear me
Travis? Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry, I apologise for that. We're also having technical difficulties. And the point I was trying, what I was trying to say there, Travis, was that these are the greatest days to live in, because I think at the moment many great ideas are converging around the same idea of decentralisation. Now, I don't know how aware you are, and I know we've been going backwards and forwards and emails and stuff, but I just think that the synergy between what you're doing with Lobbyvoice and what you're build around, and what Daniel, my friend, is building with Safe Exchange, the two seem to synergize, because he's building a whole of his Safe Exchange around the whole idea of a decentralized border, where anybody can join, and the same sort of concept. So I was just trying to aware. I mean, what led you to, or where did you first sort of learn about the Safe network, and what was being, and where do you think that the Safe network in itself will be able to really sort of push your Lobbyvoice forward, and what areas do you think that it'll be able to help and innovate, what you're trying to do?
That's a good question. I think where I'm starting at, I think I'm going to be opening up sort of a front end on a mobile application called Foundation, and building, Ethereum makes it quite easy to go in and start buying fuel, and then go through the whole process to start trying to build a platform based on their Frontier network. And I've checked out SafeX, and I think that's right along the same lines. I think the key is to try to keep Lobbyvoice is the back end as third party as possible, and have as many other organizations doing that, like Ethereum, like SafeX, handling the smart contract end of it, and handling the smart asset end of it, which is the value that's in Lobbyvoice. And then the front end be fairly simple, so that really Lobbyvoice doesn't have any connection to the contracts, the terms, really it's just going to be designed so that it's all user based, and so users create everything, and Lobbyvoice is just there to sort of put it all together, and allow people to see, scroll through the different issues, be able to pledge, be able to connect to the third parties, and so on and so forth. But each time a new contract is created, and I think that's where SmartX or SafeX comes in, is that once the issue is created, that's sort of a contract, and that value gets placed in there. It's sort of like the sword and stone. The only thing that can open that contract is the right set of terms. Mm-hmm. And it may be that inside the terms are the value cannot be released until there's proof on a ledger that that is indeed fact or law, or I don't know if you've ever heard of Factum, but they're actually putting the Honduras public records on the blockchain, and that's to avoid the corruption that local governments can basically go into a courthouse and change the public records, and then go in and kick somebody off their beachfront property, in Honduras. And so there's a lot of corruption around that. So they're starting to put the property records on the blockchain, and if there was a corrupt government and it did end up kicking somebody off their land and maybe killing some people or whatever, eventually that corrupt government would go away, and that would still be on the blockchain, that those people or that family own that property before the corruption happened. And once everything settled down to somewhat some normalcy in government or governance, then it's possible that the land that was on that blockchain could be returned to the proper owners, or at least the same family that owned it. It may not be the actual owners, but maybe the heirs of the property. There's just so many things that it seems like all you have to do is look up in the phone book. Any single company, any agency, any public service, all needs to be public on a public ledger. And it's not going to happen by itself because it's expensive. And the idea is that Lobbyvoice can crowdfund these things. People can't afford people can't afford to lobby themselves. And you ask, where did I get the idea for Lobbyvoice? And it was during the Occupy Wall Street a few years back. There was a guy, and he had a sign up, and it said, "I'm the 99%. I can't afford to lobby." And it just hit me, Well, if you're the 99%, just add $1 to everybody else's dollar, and you can afford to lobby. And literally, you could these corporations like the Koch brothers or Monsanto or any of these giant corporations, they spend $1 and they get a $20 return when they lobby. And there's Gillen's graph that shows that lobbying is the only thing that creates policy. There's literally no voice with voting. There's no voice with protesting. There's no voice with signing petitions. You can sign petitions, but nobody listens to them. But if you had a petition that had, $2 or $3 billion sitting in a smart contract in that petition saying, here's all the people, and it registers those people to a specific ISP, which these days you can't get away with owning an ISP, I don't think, without actually having some kind of ID or identification connected to that device. I think you can still do it with maybe an Ubuntu PC, but not on a smartphone, because all smartphones are connected to an ISP provider, which requires a driver's license or some sort of identification. So you can literally tie every person that's connected to a smartphone to a vote and know that that's an individual vote. And you could also show in a system if there was a corporation that wanted to sway a decision or something like that. Well, first of all, they'd have to pay for it themselves, and it wouldn't make any sense for corporations to come in and try to buy out a bunch of stuff on a vote, because they got to pay for each vote. So it just makes sense that individuals would put their money together, and it would only make sense that I think that people are more alike than they're not, and that they would actually come together on many issues. Sure, there might be issues that we don't come together on, but say there's people don't like education. Some people are okay with government institutionalized schools, but other people aren't, and those people that aren't could put their money together. When it comes to big broad things like say you wanted to create a new ISP provider because you were fed up with AT&T or Comcast or any of the major internet providers. So we decided, okay, we're going to put our money, we're going to put $1 in, and we have a goal. We know that it's going to cost, say, $2 billion to put in an ISP provider for a specific area. And it probably wouldn't be national. It would just be a sort of a test area. And if that was the kind of thing that started to take off, and it was owned by the people that bought it, and it was a smart asset, so that it was all controlled, all the management was controlled by an API running on those blockchains, on those ledgers, and it tracks all the money, it tracks everything, and quite literally, if you were to take any corporation and get rid of the CEOs and all the upper management of that corporation, you'd be saving a lot of money, and you could make you could create products for a lot less money. You could pay your employees a lot more. But I think that the upper management on almost any corporation nowadays is making, I can't say the figures, it'd be speculation, but I would guess that it's quite a lot, and that it would certainly affect the amount of efficiency that company could have, even if it was a good company. So it makes sense to create companies with upper management as APIs, and that it's an open consensus, and that the owners, the shareholders, are limited to the profit that they can make, and that they're liable. Once everything is on an open book ledger system, they're sort of liable for it.
Well, I think it's this whole area is very fascinating, because I think where it's going to go to in the very near future is, we know that the rise of artificial intelligence and how that whole, I think at the moment it seems like a white elephant in the room that nobody seems to be talking about. But it's going to, with what you were just mentioning, then it's going to make a lot of middle management and a lot of jobs. Essentially, it's going to wipe them off the off their need to actually produce something. This is where I think it's an interesting where Lobby Voice fits in this, because I see the where we're at now as a crossroads, and I think we were going to go more controlled, more centralized, more, just becoming one of everything, or we're going to diverge and it's going to scatter and we're going to come everything else. And I'm interested in it. I think I do contemplate a lot, like when we do come out the other end, if we came out the other end and there was, say in 10 years time or X amount of years time, everybody was instinctively using things like, the blockchain and the safe network, and they had a whole new paradigm was formed. Would in that new paradigm, would there still be a need for corporations, or would that all just be done by smart intelligence and artificial, or just crowd intelligence, or done through applications that we haven't even thought of, because technology is always going to rise. So I just wonder if the whole concept of corporations is going to be something that we're going to look back in future generations and think, oh, what an interesting time in human history when they actually had these little things called corporations. I don't know. This is the way I sort of think. I'm interested. I'm interested to see what your thoughts are.
Fully on board with that, and I think that you're right. I think corporations are going to be a thing of the past. And if say we did create a crowd-funded ISP provider, and the owners of that ISP provider were the people that crowd-funded it. So here's a really cool thing. It's called Lobbyvoice, and the idea is that everybody comes together. They put their money together, and they have enough money to deal with an issue. Whether it be a government issue, normally we would think, well, we need to make laws so that we can force these corporations to stop treating us this way, or giving us the raw deal when it comes to liberty or rights or whatever. Are you still there?
Yeah. Sorry, it's just my camera's just gone. It's all right.
Oh, okay. So these corporations, once they go to, or once one gets built, then it starts attracting clients or customers, and the people that own it, they own it. They bought it and they own it now. They built it with the money that they paid for, and they created an infrastructure that's there to do one thing, and that's to provide them with the service that they wanted. The issues that they have with whatever companies that they have, rather than passing laws, I think allow the corporations to be as greedy as they want to be, because that allows for a new opportunity for a decentralized autonomous organization. I call them the DAO, or DAO, like the DAO, Dao De Ching or whatever.
Yep.
Sort of the digital DAO, if you know what I mean. And it's just a new opportunity. Every time you have a government, every time you have a corporation, every time you have a centrally controlled system that makes a small group of people wealthy and takes a lot of the value and wealth from everyone else, then you have an opportunity to allow everybody else to make the choice. And right now, it's seemingly we don't have any choice. We have the choice to go to the whatever superstore is in your neighborhood, whatever blockchain, or not blockchain, just well, you know what I mean, like a Walmart or a Burger King or any of these corporations. It's seemingly that's our only choice, but we have another choice. But it's not manifested. It's not right here in our face, but it's right here in our face because we can choose to do that. And if there was an application such as Lobbyvoice, or and I don't even care if it's Lobbyvoice. If someone comes along and makes it faster, by all means, let it happen, because the faster it happens, the better. As far as I'm concerned, is the ability that everyone can choose. And I think that, as you said, these corporations, as the upper management goes by, and then robotics takes over, the blue collar jobs and the lower level jobs, people are going to find no work, and we're going to be in a system where the corporation, there's only the elite and the ultra poor, because the jobs are all taken by robotics. Now is our only chance to buy the infrastructure while we still have money, while we still have jobs, while we still can work for these corporations. Now is the only time that we have to do this, to put our money together $1 at a time and build the infrastructure that we can use for the future, for our children, for the next generations. If we don't take this opportunity right now, the government and the elites, the corporations, are going to take over, and they will create systems for their upper management. They'll start saving money in every possible way. They will lay off a lot of the middle class, and there will be a lot more poverty, and there will be a lot more competition for menial labor jobs. And those menial labor jobs will eventually get taken over by robotics, and then it'll just be the scenario where there's the ultra rich and then there's the ultra poor that are not needed for anything. And that seems like a scary scenario if you ask me. But I think that we have the choice and opportunity right now where we can create all these different decentralized organizations for every possible thing imaginable, from any human interaction, any public human interaction that you have. Now, there will be private contracts, there will be private things, and those things can remain anonymous. But when it comes to public, when it comes to a public corporation that sells public goods, that has to be regulated because of consumer safety, all these things can be done by computers, and they can all be done on ledgers that anyone can check at any point, and they can be done in a way that they can't be altered. So I really like what it says on the Frontier website. It says unstoppable applications, and that's literally what a DOA is. Once you've paid for the infrastructure and put it in place, then it's unstoppable. There's no government, there's no corporation that can take it, because it's bought and paid for, it's extremely efficient, and it's only there to enhance the lives of the people that own it. So people can create an issue, say they want to have schools, and they all lobby together and put their money together, and then they pay someone to create a school that has all the upper management on a public ledger, uncorruptible public ledger, and then there's voting by consensus, and that everyone that participates in that, and not everyone on the planet has to participate in that, only the people that want to pay for it can participate in that. And that's and that becomes where the corporation turns from a thing of profit for a select group of small people to a thing that profits for everyone. Everyone profits. They don't necessarily profit with dividends at the end of the year, but what they profit is a better service, a better system, things that actually work for them. And just to give you an idea, I mean, anybody can come up with a great idea. All they have to do is bum out next time they go pay their bills with the next company that they owe a bill with.
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought that it was a really bad thing that we pay for these things every month and they never go away, ever. It seems like we paid for the infrastructure for my phone service. It seems to me, as many devices as I've bought over the years and all the money that I've spent on internet service, which has gotten crappier and crappier over the last couple of years, it seems to me like I've bought the infrastructures to have that for life. If I was a homesteader 150 years ago, I would go and I would cut trees down and I would gather stones and clay, and I would make a home, and it would take a lot of time, but once I made it, it would be done, and I'd never have to worry about making a home again. I wouldn't have to pay for my home every month. And that's the problem with these corporations, is that it's a constant tax on our life force when our value, our lives, are worth a lot more than any of the products that we trade our time for.
Yeah. I think it's a really good point, a really good moment to sort of linger on that point. And I was just thinking when you were mentioning what you were just saying, is that I think this is why I say before, I think this is why it is really great times to be living in, because this reminds me of, if you see any of you know anything about history, that the times when there's been great enlightenments and great movements forward is when people from different backgrounds and different skills and knowledge all have the ability to discuss and shape things. And here, and I've been saying this, having a lot of discussions recently with a lot of people, and saying to people, look, right now, like you just mentioning then, right now, the people that are shaping this new world are people like myself, people like you. We're the ragtags, man. We're the outsiders, and that's what's inspiring. But I say to people, as much as it really inspires me that, like you said, anybody can come along with an idea now. They can join in, because you haven't got to go for any middlemen. You can have an idea, you can develop it. Like you say, you can use tools like Lobbyvoice and Safe Exchange, and there's so many tools that are out there for people that are coming really fast. But I think the really important thing, as much as it's inspiring, is, like you said, I don't think people realize how fortunate we are that we've got this, and we're here, because it's going to be a very short window in time. Because this is why I say to people, it's crucial that we go out and we spread this word, even if this means mouth to mouth. We have to be honest and we have to be truthful, but we have to get it out there, because at the moment we've got the advantage. We're here. We're shaping this. But if we don't get this out to as many people, like you say, the suits can take control. The generals will step in. The governments will step in. And before you know it, the tools of freedom, like the radio and like the television, all the things that have always been, our fathers and our great grandfathers, countless dead people and war and misery have led to this hold this little light of freedom up. If we just let it extinguish in our lifetime, man, with that and power of AI, this is why I say to people, we've got a momentum of history behind us, and we've got a shining light of artificial intelligence ahead of us. At the moment, we've got the ability, because we've got the advantage, as I see it, is we've got creativity. That's our one advantage we've got. We've got the ability to connect, and okay, machines can connect, but we've got the creativity, and that's maybe where we are. We've got this little slice of time in the universal everything, where right now we've got the ability to either start something off, and we can look after this seed and it will bloom into a flower, or it's just going to be stampled on, and another world's going to happen. And that's what I saw. I was just contemplating that a lot on what you just said, because as I say, I think it's, as much as you were saying about how the world is going to go and stuff like this, these are the realities that I think people need to be realizing, that we have got the greatest tools in our hands, but it's up to us if we use them. And the only way we're going to get to use them is if people switch off. I mean, it's the whole thing. If they switch off their TV sets, or don't go to the shopping mall, and get home and start to use this thing inside them. And the quicker that people wake up and realize that what's inside their head is the greatest ever supercomputer that's ever been invented, and that's ever out there. But people, instead of wasting it, you've got to use it, because this is why I say about the momentum of both ends, because that's what I'm saying. In the future, we've got AI, and behind us, we've got, which we know, this central control, and we've got this little slice. And if we don't use this little slice, we know, this dystopia is either one way or the other. Like you say, both ends are pushing, and that's why I think it's really crucial. Things like Lobbyvoice, because I think where Lobbyvoice is to me really hits as a wave and a moment is people can understand it. People understand lobbyists, and they can understand, well, wait a minute, I can take this power back. That's what I like about it. It's a very concept that people can understand, and that's why I say it's important to get the word out, because I think it's essential and crucial, because maybe we won't have this opportunity for very long, and while we have got it, we need to spread as much as possible to as many people as possible.
You're right, and that this, and I don't think it's going to. We're going to have this window for very much longer, as long as we can still work and we can still have a few dollars to put food on our families' tables, then we can still do something. But the moment that that the jobs start going away, and I don't think that the jobs have started going away yet. And it's possible that something like Lobbyvoice could start to make jobs go away faster. But the point, I don't think, is to work. I don't think that human beings should work. We're not machines. We're smart enough to create machines to do the work for us and live and essentially free us to live our lives. What we're supposed to do is live. We're supposed to create and live, and we're not supposed to balance checkbooks and just, you know, figure out what change is and pay the government to run some infrastructure to control us or to keep us safe. The only thing that's going to keep us safe is an accurate record. And we don't have there's no such thing as an accurate record on the planet right now. There's nothing. I mean, you can't, other than the blockchain. The blockchain is the only thing that you can guarantee that say you had a video camera and the data that it was capturing was encrypting at point of capture. You know, I mean, that you could use that as an argument to get out of a legal situation. If you were captured on video, you would just have to ask, well, has the camera been encrypted at point of capture on a blockchain? Well, no. Okay, well, anybody can buy $10,000 worth of software and manipulate the video and make it look like I did whatever. You know, I mean, look at the movies these days. You can make all kinds of really cool stuff happen. But if it was encrypted, however, at point of capture, if it was, as soon as it captured the you know, the few moments on film and then uploaded it to a public ledger that was uncorruptible, well, that would change law altogether. You know, I mean, that would just say who did what. You know, everything is recorded. If there was a police officer that had a body cam, and I think eventually the police, every institution in government is going to be obsolete, and I don't think we have to fight government. I don't think we have to fight corporations. I think what we need to do is ignore them, honestly.
Exactly.
And do our own thing and create private organizations. So if Lobbyvoice did create an ISP provider or an insurance company or anything else for that matter, that could be a private organization. The profits could be recycled into all the people that own it. It wouldn't really be a profit at all. It would just be the money that was earned, you know, from clients, from people paying for the service, would be very inexpensive, and eventually it would probably go away, I think, because once you build the infrastructure for something and it just works, and you know, I'm sure there's maintenance, but like my own house, I don't mind paying for a little maintenance, or on my car, I don't mind paying for a little maintenance. What I do mind paying for is the mortgage payment every month, you know, which I don't have one, or a car payment, but if I did, it would really suck, you know. And I know a lot of people have that, and it's just a constant tax every single month of their lives. And it doesn't seem to me that piece of equipment is worth that much human time, because I started out building houses as a kid, and I understand how much energy it takes to create something that lasts a really long time. And how underpaid craftsmen are, you know, for creating those things. But in the instance of this insurance company, it's now just an infrastructure. It's now just a pool where people put their money in, and they get it back if they don't ever have a claim. You know, whatever the terms that everybody decides, because they're the owners. It would be like if you owned a portion or a share of the electric company that puts lighting in your house. If the electric company were an entirely autonomous organization where all of the upper management, all the bills, all the finances were put on public ledgers, and there were APIs that ran every little thing, including you know, the tasks for efficiency for the actual real people that work for that electric company. You know, there would be engineers, and there would be specific types of people, but as far as bookkeepers and you know, upper management and all these different folks, they would no longer have a job, and I don't think that they should have a job now, honestly, because I don't really think they're doing anything. You know, I think maybe they should find something more productive to do.
Well, that's exactly the point, my friend. And I think, I mean, you mentioned earlier on that what kind of kicked you off with Lobbyvoice was when you went up to the Occupy movement, and I wasn't really kind of overly involved apart from just as an interested bystander. But that's where Network 99 came from, because it was exactly that idea. Because I think the future is basically it's going to have to be one way or the other for those who create and produce. Now, people always say to me like, "Oh, the future can be really, is a really negative future." And they paint this negative future where everyone's unemployed and people are getting poorer. And I look, my answer to them is like, well, do you realize that right now, 5/6 of this world, they don't, if you earn over $34,000, you are the 1%. The rest of the world are all living off the land. They understand about how to create things from tin cans, or they you can use. And if we just gave them the ability, that's why I fly the flag for the Safe Network, because I think that's a really big step towards giving producers direct access and people who make things. And now, the reason I mention this is just what I'm saying. I'm sure your part of the world is exactly the same as my part of the world. And what frustrates me and many people I speak to is they're surrounded by people who don't create. And in the analogy I use, there's an old painting over here. It's a very famous painting called the Hainwaite, and it's an image of a group of people putting this big barn, this big trolley of hay for a village, and it's the exactly same equation that what starts off with 9 people wanting to move maybe two, the one person out of the 10, so you've got 9 people carrying that one person on the hay. That's great. Then a few people at the back think, oh, do you know what, I can make out, I'm sick and I can jump on that. And before you know it, you've got 60 carrying 40, and before you know it, you've got, and at some point the 10 at the front are like, no. And do you know the point I'm making is the people who aren't creative, the people who aren't producing, whatever industry, I'm not saying my circle of friends is universal, but everybody I speak to, the thing that frustrates them around them is the people who aren't creative, the people who are just going to work, whatever it is, they just sit there, they don't do anything, and you know them all the time. And do you know what? Those people, well, hey ho. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. 5/6 of the world, they don't. Those people, they're going to have to learn to produce, and they're going to have to learn to create. Because you mentioned earlier on, I mean, especially where the part of the world you are, I mean, the real reality is, and this is what makes me, the people who complain most about the future and it's going to be negative, I think of the people who are the weakest, because I think, well, you're only 4 or 5 generations ago that, like you said, people were living out in a wooden hut, and they were facing bears, and they were facing nature in its raw tooth and claw, and they didn't have time to get microaggressed and feel like, oh, I'm being microaggression and I've been upset because somebody said that, they didn't have no. And that's how people live around the world now, that, and that's the point. That's real shit, man. That's real life. And those people who are like this, well, you're gonna have to wake up, because those people who don't create and they want to sit there and go, oh, it's all going to be negative, and think, well, okay, well, how long would you last out in the real world? Not long. That's nature, man, and that's not being any kind of hierarchy or looking down at anybody, but that's nature, man. Nature is raw and it's in its tooth and claw, and it doesn't give a shit. When you're out there and you walk out in the hills, man, it's not going to go, oh, you're some really educated, well educated. No, it won't give a toss. It just go, you got to survive, and that's the essence of life. And that's what I think the people who are the weakest are the people who have really gotten away from that whole essence of what it's like to be a human being, and what it actually, I think the greatest thing to be is when you're alive, because that's the whole point. Life is quicksand, and it's what we do, and that's why I want the future to be about rewarding the people who create, because if we can do that, that's a step forward, rather than just rewarding, as we do at the moment, the people who are parasitical, or the people who are sucking off the people who create. And the people who create are getting, I mean, I know, I talk to artists and musicians, and that's the old joke. I mean, we're the starving people at the bottom. And you go back 500 years ago, it was never like that. The people who they were at the top of the people, but that can switch. We're a funny species, humans. We switch from one paradigm to another very easily.
Well, I think it's going to switch again. I think that the craftsmen and the artists and the musicians and all the creative people of the world are going to be the most valuable people coming up, because if robotics do indeed take over every known thing, like laying brick and building houses and you know, taking upper management and assembling every, you know, printing everything that we use, then we're not going to have any jobs, and the only people that will be sort of worth anything, even if we don't have money, which I think that we're going to move to a social equity system anyway. I think money is about to be a thing of the past. And you know, once we get there, the people that are creative, they're going to be the only ones that are worth anything, because you know, everybody's going to want to see them because they're the ones that are doing stuff. And everybody else that doesn't do stuff, well, they don't work because the robots and the machines do it. And eventually, we're not going to need to really have to rely on the doers and the makers. I think that we can create machines to do everything for us eventually, and I don't think that's too far down the road. You know,
But that opens a fascinating door, and I would love to linger on this very point in a moment, because before we kind of diverge away from this, because it's not often I have this conversation with many people. So while we're here, this is a question that I spend hours and days contemplating. This is what I say to people over and over again when I talk to them. It always, you know, but people just ignore it and they move on. But this is the question I contemplated for a long time. Okay, so we do invent this utopia where all this. Then surely the next question for human beings is like, okay, so you've got all the time in the world. The day is still 24 hours a day. What are people going to do? And I think people they haven't really thought about this. Like, what are you going to do all day? Because people, they, you know, especially as you know, I mean, and I think this is, again, it's an exponential thought process, and it becomes an exponential kind of, you know, philosophical question you get your head around, because as you know, technology is going to make us live longer, healthier lives. I mean, I was reading last week, they're about to release a silicon based cream that basically makes everybody's face go back to when they were 20s, and it's going to be $1 trillion organization, and they're just setting up all the distribution points, and I thought, well, yeah, exactly, that's what I'm saying. Exponentially, we're going to get to the point where we're going to live longer, and yet we're going to have more and more time on our hands. And this is what I think, you know, people go, oh, it's going to be great. And I think, okay, well, what do you do now? You're the most miserable people on the planet because you don't know what to do with yourselves. And this is what I mean. This is why I think it's a mindset one. I think the biggest one that humans have got to we've got to wrestle with it as a species. And again, I don't think many people talk about it, is, okay, how do we, like I say, how do we supplement, how do we get that creativity going in everybody? Because it's going to have to be something, because if you're going to spend all day, okay, well, great, well, you're going to become like a sultan of some Arabian country, and you're going to lie on your back and have grapes fed to you all day. Well, that can only go on so long. You're going to get bored. There's going to be an itch for creativity, and that's why I think it's something that we need to, as a species, and we need to explore. We need to explore more, because it's not explored. Like you say, it's not taught in schools, in jobs. The whole of society is all about suppressing creativity, and essentially it's something that we can all do, because that's the whole point. We're none of us was, you know, I paint this. That wasn't something the skill I learned in a day. That's something I had to hard work, which is the point of anything. It's anybody can create, but it's linking the reward to work, which is the thing that's gone missing at the moment, because a lot of people can work and go out and do stuff and get no rewards for it. And that's where I think the future is, to me, really positive rather than being a negative one.
Yeah, there's a book. I think it's called Mana. I read it online, and it's about this futuristic society, which is pretty much to the one that it talks about open source, and it talks about the elites getting more and more power and tyranny. And then there's this guy that invests in an open source, and he goes off and he creates the Australia project. But to answer your question, in that book, they talk about that, and there's two types of people in that book. There's I think they call them the P's and the Verts. So the P's are the people that want to be in their body and do things with their life, create, play music, live. And then there's the Verts. They want to live in a virtual reality where they basically have a brain, and and they call there's the half peeps, which they still have a body, but they're transhumanists, and they kind of go in between the virtual worlds and the real worlds. And these Verts, they're pretty low energy people. They don't cost a whole lot, and of course they have this in this thing they call the vertebrae, where they sever part of the spine and they put in a computer that is the device. It is your cell phone. It's your connection to the net, right? And you have instant knowledge of all this stuff. And so there's racks, and the people that are racks are the most extreme verts, and they're actually just brains in a jar, like that Futurama, you know. And they live their entire lives, you know, out of body in this virtual world. And so there will be in that book it addresses that there's amazing innovators and there's people that create, but for those people that don't want to do anything, they have the option to become a vert.
Well, exactly it, man. Or our version of this, and that again. And I think this is one of the things we're going to see this in the very near future. I think the minute that technology like the Oculus Rift and such like technologies get switched on, and you link that with pornography, just as a male species, how many males are never going to leave the room, and they're never going to leave their bedrooms? It's going to be, it's just going to. We jest about it, but these are I think the thing is, this is why I love comedians so much, because I think sometimes the things that make us laugh right now, maybe they are the subconscious kind of thought process, and you think, okay, we laugh about it, but you think, well, maybe that's going to be a very near future, that men will never leave the house, and it will start to augment humans and how they think, because this is going to come very soon. And you know, I mean, I only say this whenever I talk about things, and I mention pornography as in the sense of that, how we are basically genetic beings, and we are driven by genetics. That's why, you know, the whole of that industry works. And you think how much it's changed in the last 20 years. I mean, if you said to me 20 years ago that in the future, you know, 20 years down the line, you'd be able to get anything on the phone, and I thought this better day. Imagine being a 16, 17-year-old now walking around. Well, you know, when I was 16, if I had that ability now, I'd be like, I don't know if I'd would have done half the shit I would have done. I'd probably just been locked in my bedroom. And I'm just interested, because I think these are things that, like, again, these are going to be the unknown issues of things that are going to rise from technology. And again, like I say, it plays into what you just said about the verts and the peeps, because we already see amount of people just locked in their bedrooms, and they become, like you said, they almost are that plugged-in machine. They're sat there playing on their virtual worlds and stuff, and that's only going to increase and increase and increase. And eventually, it's going to get to the point of, like, you know, there's still going to be, you're still going to need humanity to support those people, and that's where they become. I don't know. This is what I'm saying. This is when you start getting to real questions about how things are going to happen in the future and stuff like that. But bringing it back to really kind of here now, where we are on this, you know, in 2015 and stuff. I think one of and I'm interested to where you are, and whether this is actually related to where you are as in place in America. I look over to what's gone on in Colorado, particularly around, you know, certain laws and how they, you know, particularly the whole war on drugs, and how that's just been a perfect example of what almost Lobbyvoice stands for. That's been real people standing up and saying, we're not taking this shit anymore, and we're just going to, and they've implemented it and seen the change, which you think all the propaganda. Now, I'm just from saying, so that's a very perfect example of that really in action, and how it has changed things. So I'm trying to say, has where you are in America and where you are based in, obviously, Colorado, has that got a lot to do with where you started off on this journey, or is this journey where you started with this whole thought process go way back, and you know?
Well, it started with, I mean, I've lived actually in Colorado my whole life. I was born and raised here. I actually lived in California. I went to Peru. And I traveled around the United States, but I've just been here. I built houses for a long while, and I got into computers because I didn't want to be 60 years old still hammering nails and trying to hobble around building houses. You know, it's just, you got to try to figure out a different way. So I started getting interested in computers about 10 years ago. About 7 years ago, I started coming up with an idea called WikiBeing, which is another platform that I'm slowly working on, which is a much bigger project than Lobbyvoice. And it means literally what I know is being. And I think in the writings in the manifesto, it's truly what I believe. That's all anyone knows. No one really knows anything except for themselves and what it is to be themselves, you know. And so I came up with this idea that Wiki Being would be a platform where everyone could anonymously talk about themselves in sort of a journal. And as technology went more advanced, that machines could capture information about us anonymously and put it on a ledger anonymously, but share that ledger with all other information. So, you know, say there's something going wrong with me medically, and I think this would be perfect for the medical industry. The medical industry really doesn't do this, but if there's something going wrong with me, rather than running to the doctor, I can go onto my Wiki Being and say, hey, these are the symptoms I'm experiencing. And you can do that to Google and you'll get a bunch of different stuff up. But this would be more interconnected to people's actual experience of whatever, say it was a disease that they were going through, you know, and if everyone had a log about all the things that they did, or if there was a machine that could capture all the things they did, including the things that they ate, you know, how they spent their time, with the type what kind of people they spent their time with, and so on and so forth, and how that related to their healing or getting worse or whatever. And that's just medical. I mean, it could be everything. It could be education. It could be interests. It could be just, you know, the idea behind Wiki Being is to cultivate a perfect environment for each individual based on their interests and who they are and who they come from and so on and so forth. And that this whole, that this could be sort of like the collective consciousness manifest, where all of us could come together anonymously, so we're not being scrutinized, so we can actually tell the truth. And it's kind of like going to a bar in a foreign city. You go into a bar and you sit down next to somebody and you start talking to them. You don't know them, you don't know their name or anything else, and you tell them everything about your whole life, right? And they may tell you something that helps you out, you know, that some advice just by listening to you that you needed to hear. And then you leave the bar and you never see that person ever again. You don't know their name. You don't know anything, you know. It's sort of the kind of the concept where we can all communicate in a way where we don't have to know who each other is, where the communications that we're communicating are actually tied to sort of a digital karma. So, you know, the more outstanding a person you are, the more digital karma you get based on consensus, based on peers, peer-to-peer. But anyway, I started creating this platform, Wiki Being, and that's when I discovered Bitcoin about 5 years ago. And that was when Bitcoin was about 17 cents a coin. I think it was about 7 years ago or six years ago now. And I didn't buy any. I downloaded the Bitcoin client and I started to mine them. I think I maybe mined a few Satoshis. And I didn't think much about it, but I was really interested about the fact that it was a decentralized platform of anonymity where people could, I wasn't even interested in the money aspect of it. All I was interested in is that how could you publish something on the internet that was anonymous, you know? And that didn't exist at the time. That wasn't anywhere. That Bitcoin was the only thing. And I found it, and it was kind of a funny thing because it was, I didn't take it seriously at all, you know? I didn't take Bitcoin seriously until it went to about $250 a coin. And that's when I started to take a better look at it. And since then, I've, you know, have focused on Lobbyvoice. Really is just an aspect of Wiki Being. It's just a way. I mean, when I wrote that platform, but it became clear to me that Wiki Being is too vast. It's too big. It has to start somewhere small. And so that's where Lobbyvoice came out of. It came out of this idea that we can all come together and start to build the infrastructure for the things that we need, and eventually create a society where we've paid for all the infrastructure. It's all paid for. It's all there. And the only thing I have to do is pay for the upkeep. And I truly believe by then we'll have robots that can actually self-replicate and utilize everything, you know, where we can start to You know, when we first discovered gas and oil, for like the first 100 years, we burned off the natural gas because we didn't know what to do with it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we don't do hardly anything with the leftovers. That's why we have all this waste and all this pollution and everything else, because we're not using all of the stuff. That we're just using a small portion of it. We just take the cream and throw the milk away, you know. And so now we use natural gas, and it's a renewable resource. It's you know, supposedly less harmful on the environment than mining for oil. It depends on who you talk to about fracking and all that other stuff. But it's just an example. I'm not for gas and oil or not for it, but everybody uses it to heat their homes. So anyway, Lobbyvoice is just it's just that it stemmed out of this idea that we can start to communicate in a way that's more meaningful. And you know, I don't know. Have you checked out Minds.com? Are you part of Minds yet?
No.
No.
But while we're here, I mean, again, this is something maybe we could put a flag in, and definitely return to another conversation, another podcast on it. But just to give you my quick overview of it here, when you were mentioning then about the whole concept of how can I even get my head around it? The whole concept of what you're mentioning about how your wiki being and stuff, and I again, it's something I've contemplated a lot on, and I think it's again, as I say, I want to put a flagpole in it, and we'll maybe return to it. But I was just imagine that on the safe network, and you think, okay, so look, the scenario you gave, like with people meeting in an airport and they'll giving their information. I've been contemplating that idea for a while, and it'd be like if you could just reward people so they could give it. I am, and give all their information out. So say, this is hello, I am X, Y, and Z, and this is, and they did it in their own language, and then you could put that onto something like the Safe Network. It could be stored there, and then you could add that into this, like you said, like you were saying in wiki being, as in you add it into the collective knowledge, and then anybody can start to learn, because let alone the artificial, but people could go, okay, I want to know what actual hello da 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 means in Swahili. They go on to like a wiki being, find it out, and think, oh, do you know what? And that person, because they give them their information of this, that language, or the information and the whatever they've given out, because it's a smart contract, they'll be rewarded for it instantly. So then you could have a kid in Africa who's going to be rewarded instantly for, like, I don't know, he's putting up, this is what we call in my local village a potato, and because it's only found in our local, and then, do you know what I mean? And I just thought there's so many areas and operations and opportunities to reward this and link it into people where they're not just doing it for the altruistic point of view, but they're actually doing it and they're going to get rewarded, which plays into that point of that's how you, to me, that's how you strive forward. You have to reward people who are innovating and reward people who are doing stuff, because you can't, I don't know, maybe I'm too long, too old in my head and we're going around the world too much, but you can't just rely on people's just general goodwill, because there'll always be the predators out there. So I get going back to nature. Life isn't fluffy, deer where they all go into the woods and they turn into fairies. That's not life. And it's like the same with human beings. There's predators, and that's why if you reward things, then people become more. They become more innovative. But I'm trying to say this. Like I say, I think it's a flagpole we can stick in. Come back to another conversation, because I think the synergy between wiki being and the Safe Network and potentially it opens up it's just mind blowing, and maybe that's another conversation completely. But I just wanted to put a flagpole in it, because I think
it's actually totally valid, and I appreciate that you bring that up. And the reason why it's valid is because of this. I think that anything that we do as a society as we move forward, the real value. Gold, silver, even water, everything on this planet isn't the real value. The real value is people. Mm-hmm. And it's not just people, it's people being their authentic selves. They're not just them being a drone going to work and, paying the bills and, following the rules, but people that that are authentic and have learned to live and learn to create and to make and to innovate and to think objectively and to contribute. That is what's valuable. That's the only thing that's valuable, and the elites know that. That's the big illusion. Is that money is not, money has no value. All money does is destroy value. So when you take what you are and trade it for a piece of paper, then you've destroyed the value, because now you have something that you can spend, right? You can't really spend yourself. You're valuable, but you can't really spend it unless you trade your time, and it's usually way on. I mean, your time is never well compensated for. I mean, we should all be getting paid. You know, in today's economy, we should be getting paid $1,000 an hour, each of us, you know, just to go to work. That's how valuable our time is. We literally are the most finite, unique, rare resource on the planet, each one of us, because we can't be recreated. Once we're dead, we're gone. That's it. There's no more. And, you know, you or me or someone else may come up with some amazing thing that will not only affect you and me and the rest of the people on the planet, but also generations and generations to come. So if anybody hurts you, or, I mean, they might as well steal gold or resources from the earth, because those things can be water, gold, the most precious things on the planet they're all renewable. They're all replaceable. Gold can be melted down. But people, nope, you can't. Once you harm a person, or take their life, or do something to them to prevent them from becoming valuable, authentically valuable to not only the people of this world but also the future people, then you're violating a natural resource, a precious natural resource. You know, war is an abomination because of that reason alone. Because someone in that country somewhere, some little kid, may change the world, may be able to innovate, may have the spark of information, you know, somewhere inside him whenever he grows up or whatever, to do that. And when we go to war, we're not only taking from that country, or, you know, we're taking from ourselves and our future, our children. And that's everybody. You know, you can't just say if you're an American, or if you're or if you live in some other country, you can't just say, you know, well, it's just us against them. No, we're all here together, and we're all the most valuable things that have ever been here, at least to us. You know, I mean, if you ask a turtle what's most valuable, the turtle's going to say, you know, I'm most valuable. But as far as people go, we are the most valuable thing that there is, and we should be treated and respect each other as the most valuable, precious natural resources. And so I think that's I don't know if I hit on that subject. I think maybe I strayed away from the subject a bit.
No, I think exactly it, and I think this is one of the things that I think is really hits and really does it kind of hits the nail, and it's a synergy of what you're just saying there, because at the end of the day, you know, it's everybody knows it. I mean, I'm sure this story goes through many cultures, and I'm sure in every language, but you can't take the gold with you, you can't take the silver with you. I mean, that's virtually in every narrative of every culture that's gone through. None of it, you can't take any of it through with you, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's the old Hamlet one here, my kingdom for horse, my kingdom for horse. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much power you got, how much riches you got. What really is important, and not what you just said then, and I think it's absolutely spot on, it's the only currency I think people need to really concentrate on. It's not money, and it's not gold, and it's not wealth, and it's not power. The true currency is how you treat other people. Because when it all breaks down, I mean, that works both ways. You know what I mean? My friends will come. I know the people I can reach out to. If shit comes down in my life, I know the people I can reach out to, and they're going to be there. And they won't care whether I've got all the riches in the world, or if I was, I had nothing, because they were there when I had nothing. And that currency of human, and that's comes from virtue, that comes from, you know, treating other people, that comes from just a basic understanding of you treat other people as you want to be treated yourself. You don't be violent towards them. You don't. It's just simple universal things that we've just been strayed away from, because we, you know, like, this is what I'm trying to say. We live in a culture where those things aren't rewarded. You know, that you know what I mean. It's kind of like this is the whole thing, isn't it? All the time there's safety nets there, and people are taking your money to put a safety net underneath you. It makes us more as a culture weak, because it's kind of like, instead of everybody else looking after everyone else, it's like, oh well, the government will look after me. The government will, you know, I'll always have the government. There's someone there underneath me, and it is an illusion. It's a total illusion, because this is what people need to, I think, are really starting to wake up and understanding that these things are just illusions, and ultimately what it comes down to is you've got to be treating people in a humane way, because that will get you a long way. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you've got no money or a lot of money. If you've got, do you know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say. That's my own personal experience. I'm sure you're the same. You know, the people that are going to be there, and they would be there with you, you know, whatever happened. And you know, and I'm like, I think this is again, I think this is where life strays into everything. It's you know, people say, oh well, I've got money that, you know, that will be my thing to the end of the life, and then I can die. I'm always like, well, do you realize that every human being on this planet is just one bad argument, 5 drinks, and a situation away from being a bum? All of us. You know what I mean? All it takes is one argument with your missus, 5 bad drinks, you know, one situation, and you're the bum, man. So that's what I'm saying. That's gone.
Well, so on that note, you know, as time goes on, and as we don't have jobs anymore because robots are taking over everything, and technology is there to do the things. You know, I think that technology is one thing, and it's to keep consistency. And eventually we're going to have cars, and we can't be consistent. You can be the best driver in the world, but you can't be 100% of the time safe. You know, you just can't be. It's impossible. Human beings aren't consistent, and we shouldn't be. And that's why we have computers. They can be consistent. I can put a program on my computer, and as long as it lasts, it'll continue to use that and do that program indefinitely. And that's consistency. That's the kind of consistency we need when it comes to flying airplanes, when it comes to driving cars, when it comes to running corporations that make products that people consume, when it comes to manufacturing resources from the earth so that it's in the least impact possible way for the biosphere. I mean, this is all common stuff. Everybody gets this. But because we have this money, this idea that we can separate the value from people by you know, what we've done is we said, okay, here's all these valuable people. I mean, the only reason why anything exists is because of people. It doesn't exist because of anything other than people, as far as man-made things, cities and roads and that kind of thing. So the real value, the infrastructure, was made by people, but now it's just a select group of people that are just sort of parasites on the rest of everyone else, and it shouldn't be that way. And I think it's going to be very similar in the future, that we will still have a safety net. We will still have things taking care of us. Computer systems, decentralized autonomous organizations, public ledgers, you know. All these different things are going to start taking care of us, and the reason why things have gone awry is because of double books, and now it was never obvious to anyone, and except for a few of, you know, the people had come up with this problem. I believe it was the Byzantine generals problem, which is the idea of trust, of trying to figure out how you can, you know, get these people over here, which are supposed to be on your team, to attack all at the same time, and know that everybody's on the same page, and know that the information you have is uncorrupted. That's the real information. And we couldn't do that until we had the computer. So this is the first time in history that we could actually, that's why it's so amazing to me when people say, well, this is the end of the world, things are melting down, and you know, we're just going to go to me, this, like you said, this is the most exciting time to live right now, because we have the computer that can create consistency where we never had it here on Earth, and we can't tell the truth from one person to the next. We are always stuck in our own perspective, and even if we want to tell the truth, we're not going to tell the whole truth to the you know. But if there are computers capturing the data, then that's telling the whole truth, and we can just look at that and know what the truth is.
Yeah, completely. And that, I mean, personally, that's why I think Lobbyvoice is a very subversive piece of technology, or a very subversive thought, because how many people, and I don't care, you can walk out somewhere, and I don't know what it was like in America, I don't want to give figures, but we had over 1 million people over here march. I mean, you mentioned earlier on about the war. Over 1 million people marched in the streets of cities over here. Did the politicians listen? Did they? No, they're not going to listen. But that's the subversive thing about Lobbyvoice. See, if you can then say to people, well, look, exactly it. Your voice doesn't count, but the lobbyists do. But now, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to go and play them their own game. And if there is if we're going to have a need for a government, we can now lobby them. And it's like I'm saying, it's like going to a poker game. If you can walk in with that amount of cash on the table, do you think they care? They don't care. And it's suddenly like the people could raise, like you said, 65 million pound or 6.4 billion pounds. You know what I mean? Then they would have a game to the table, and then people would suddenly realize, like, wow. And that's where the Lobbyvoice is really subversive, because people are, I'm sure, and I'm sure it's the same in your part of the world, but people are just fed up with this, thinking, I don't get a voice anyway. They may be great democracy believers and think, the government's a great thing, but then they see things happening around them, like wars are a very big focus, and especially the world we live in at the moment. And that's where the real, like I say, the subversive nature of Lobbyvoice comes in, because it's just going to say to people, yeah, there you go. This is a tool where you can really lobby your government around you, and you've actually got power. When it doesn't matter, you can't come in with $1 million and disrupt Lobbyvoice, because like everybody's got, exactly the same amount of, like you said, this decentralized model of doing things. I tell you, man, it's like I say, you're about to. This is why I'll fly the flag for it, because it has a instant synergy and with how people are thinking at the moment. I personally think, and I think it's very subversive.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on the podcast and talking about Lobbyvoice. And I think that Lobbyvoice has a lot of potential. I'm technically challenged. I'm still learning some. I've just started looking at Rust, believe it or not. I've been knee deep in C++, and a lot of it's useless to me for what I want to do. So I've been really just trying to wrap my head around more advanced stuff without knowing the history of coding. I know a little bit of PHP. I know enough HTML to be dangerous. I know, I know enough to sort of try to muddle my way through this. But I'm hoping at some point I can maybe crowd sell it and get more people involved with it. But the great thing about Lobbyvoice is that it can be local. It can be on a national scale. It can be on a global scale. We don't have to directly lobby government. We can just circumvent government. Mm-hmm. We can create our own policies and attach those policies to private organizations. And here's the beautiful thing, and a lot of people don't understand about law. Law is simply a library of context. And what a lot of people don't understand about the language that we speak is that you look up any word in the dictionary, and it defines that word by context of other words. That's how it does it. So I wouldn't lie to you. This is how all the words are defined in every language. It's defined by other words. So in the language of the law, every single word in whatever country you live in that law has a definition, and that definition isn't necessarily the same definition that you learned when you were growing up. Like the definition of a person or the definition of a citizen and all these different things. And if you don't understand those definitions, then you can't really talk to these people, because you don't understand the language they're talking. even though it sounds familiar to you because you've heard words that sound like that before.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
No, I was just going to say, fundamentally, my friend. I mean, I recommend people go and listen to the podcast I had with Kevin from Brian Law, which is an old Irish law one. And we were discussing this, you know, that very thing, and it even gets into the use of how certain words were, you know, like sovereign. Sovereign is your own mind, and now, like you say, under the law, sovereign means state. And
right.
that's a classic example. So I just wanted to interject with that because that's just a perfect example of, like I say, this is out there. That's common knowledge, but people they don't know it because
Right.
you know, for whatever reason. But
it's easy to combat law because all you really have to say is that you don't understand the definition. And if someone were to come along and put the entire code of law on a blockchain and then have APIs be able to research whatever the judge is saying or the prosecutor is saying, then you would never need an attorney. And I can almost guarantee you that 90% of the case law, if APIs could search the blockchain, could find that the case law is invalid. Because judges, they can't possibly know the entire code. They can't possibly know, but a computer can. Once you get all that stuff in one library, an API can know instantly any answer within that code, within that library, and what the definitions mean and how they would apply to you. And I think, you know, that's really something that needs to happen yesterday. And that's decentralizing the law, the legal code, putting it on a blockchain so that it's open. Right now, the United States has something called LexisNexis, and the only people that have access to the LexisNexis are attorneys, people that have used the bar or sworn the bar oath and gone through that. Basically, special people. The only people that are allowed to look at the law. This is the funny thing, right? We are ignorant. We're guilty of the law, and ignorance is no excuse for that guilt. But we're not allowed to know what's in it. Yeah, we're not. So, but the thing is that it's all a contract. It's all voluntary. Every single bit of it, even down to the point of you being punished for a crime, is voluntary. And even though it seems like there's no way out of it because these people have better rhetoric and they know what they're talking about and I don't, and there's no attorney that's really going to defend me because they don't really work for me anyway. They work for the bar. They swore an oath to it. They didn't swear an oath to me. So no matter how much money I pay an attorney, he's never working for me. You can get a lawyer to work for you, but a lawyer can't represent you in a court of law, at least in the United States. I don't know how it works there, but here you have to have an attorney which swore an oath against the Constitution, which is the law of the land. It's just this funny cyclical thing, but it's all corporate law. It's all statute, and it all works, and it's almost always, unless the judge doesn't understand the law, unless he has interpreted the law wrong through like case law, and that's possible. And it's also possible to recall an order from a judge that has interpreted the law wrong. But for the most part, it's all in this context. And my point about this whole thing is that we can create new contexts. We can create a smart contract and create our own law within that smart contract. And now what we have, if there's money in that smart contract, we have the law of the land, or the law of the value, that'll trump any law of the land. We don't care what the government does anymore, because that is what makes the new term. That's what creates policy. When you have terms inside a contract and you publish those terms to applicants that are going to come along and say, well, we want that $1 billion. We'll come in and we'll build that decentralized autonomous organization for you. It's going to cost you that $1 billion that's in the account, and we will come to the terms, and the terms would be on a blockchain. They would have to be provable on a public ledger. And if it were a law that we wanted to change, they would have to be able to prove, the applicants would have to prove on a ledger that it was so, because the terms in the contract need to read a ledger. They can't just, look at the TV and see Congress. They couldn't. A smart contract, even if there was a law that was passed through Congress, it wouldn't be able to release the terms because there would be no communication between the computer program the PHP embedded inside the HTML that you can't see, there would be no communication. So some applicant would have to build that library, and it could be LexisNexis. They could say, well, we've got the library already. All we have to do is upload it to the blockchain for the $1 million you have in that account. And now the entire legal system is on that ledger, and it can be searched by anyone. So now what we've done is we've verified whatever law that we wanted to verify in order to release the funds out of that account. We've made it so that the blockchain can actually read the code of law and all the context within it. And also, we can utilize that for any other aspect. We can make it free, make a free service so that anyone that's ever in trouble with anything can utilize an API as their attorney rather than an attorney that's sworn oath to the bar. And that would be, you know, admissible to any court because it's not a counsel. It's a notepad, essentially. You know, that's all a computer really is a glorified notepad.
Well, man, I mean, this is the funny thing. I mean, you speak to me, and I'm a subject in a kingdom with no constitution, judged by people wearing white wigs from the 17th century. So I kind of like looking longingly over to the part of the world, and I think the valuable lesson of and this is where this is the whole point of what I'm trying to say about, you know, the subversive nature of Lobbyvoice, because I think the one thing where we particularly, I look over here to America, and I'm sure, you know, I've had many conversations with many Americans to understand it's not like that now. But you're a perfect example of, like I said, I mean, I'm a subject to a queen in a kingdom, you know, and I have no constitution. You do have a constitution, but that whole constitution was built around the idea of making, let's try the experiment. We'll make the government, but it's got to be as small as possible. And what did we learn? Even if you make it as small as possible, it balloons into the biggest entity ever on this planet. And that's the lesson we've got to learn as a species in the future, that you can't allow this. We've got to either have completely, we either feed them the centralized machine, which is the states, and this is what I'm saying. And the ridiculous things about any states is, like I say, you were mentioning all the in-depth thing, you know, subjects of your law, and that's why I did mention over here. I mean, here I am, just a few thousand miles away. I can get in a plane and fly to yours, but you can come over here, and suddenly you enter a kingdom over here, and it's like Hobbit land, and it's like what white powdered wigs, and this is what I mean. And what I'm trying to say is we've got to move away from this, because we've tried the experiment, and this is why I'm saying, that's why I link it back to Lobbyvoice. We've tried the experiment of, you know, well, okay, we can box government into a small corner, and it's like a cancer. It just grows and grows and grows, and that's what I mean about the subversive element of Lobbyvoice, because it's basically saying you're lobbying for decentralization, which is it's a real dual size, you know. That's what I'm trying to say, man. I think I don't know, that's sorry, that's my thought on it, because I just think it's like you say, it goes back to this whole thing where we've got to walk away from the experiment of understanding that the control of people has got to stop. And basically, the people who control people are the governments. You know, and this is one of the things. The reason that there are people walking around doing what they're doing, you know, the reason there are warfare is because they can tax people. And again, this is where Lobbyvoice comes in again. It's using, and that's what I love about it most. You're using language. It's a bit like what we did with N99. We took the 99 and we take something and we use that. And the idea of, like, I mean, right now, other than, I'd imagine, the two free hated people in the world, is a politician, a journalist, and a lobbyist. And you taking that word and going, okay, you know,
it's the pen is the mightiest weapon in the world. Because it's nonviolent. And it can change things in ways people never imagined before. But the other thing I really am excited about, if something like Lobbyvoice or Lobbyvoice comes about, is that it's really going to start to boost the Bitcoin economy. I mean, if I could build a platform where I had 1 million different issues, and each issue had anywhere from $1 million to a couple $1 billion on each issue, and they were all pumped through Bitcoin, I think that would really start to increase the public adoption of Bitcoin. I think that for these technologies, we need to not rely on the public to make these technologies happen. What we need to do is rely on each other. We need to build systems that are built on each other. So each time we build a new system that's built on the Bitcoin blockchain, we're closer to using Bitcoin as money. And I don't think Bitcoin's going to stay money. I think it's going to be a bridge, an interim. And the money of the future is going to be, there's going to be 7.5 billion coins minted, or cryptocurrencies minted for each man, woman, and child. Plus, there's probably going to be cryptocurrencies minted for every natural resource and everything that the biosphere has. And as far as governments go, I want to see 7.5 billion governments too.
That's a very good way of mentioning this, man. I mean, one of the things that obviously, and again, this is, I think, one of the reasons I really wanted to sort of get you on this and have this conversation is for people that you mentioned earlier on there, you who wanted to get involved. How can they reach out to you? I only mention this because are you on Twitter? You on Instagram? I mean, how can people reach out to you if they were going to get involved? I mean, I can point you in directions, but the reason I sort of say it is because I know there's many people that I've had similar conversations to, and have similar projects. Like you said, we can all be building with each other. So if those people did want to reach out to you, how's the best way of getting hold of you? You know what I mean?
Well, I've sort of given up on my Twitter account. I still have it. I don't have an app on any of my machines anymore. I never canceled the account, but so I don't really check into Twitter. I've given up Facebook completely. So right now, currently, Minds is the best place to find me. I'm usually checking out Minds every day. So I'm at Lee Travis on Minds. And I also have at Lobbyvoice on Minds. And I also have at WikiBeing on Minds, which I haven't done anything with yet. So that's the best way to get with me. I also have a Gmail account. It's at Lee Travis 11111111, and that's the best way to get a hold of me.
And is there anything particularly that we tapped upon some sort of things in this conversation, but is there anything particularly right now you're on the lookout for? I mean, I mention this because I know we're going through the same process with me and Bill and Network 99, and I'm no coder at all, so I understand all the processes of trying to reach out to people and vice versa. So I'm saying to you, what is it particularly? Is there anything you're particularly looking for, or skills, or any knowledge, or anything particular anyone can really sort of what one thing right now would you actually on the search for?
I think right now I would really like 5 dedicated people to help with development. I live in a place where I basically almost have no internet connection. I have a smartphone which has very limited data, and then I have to travel 20 miles to a place where I can get internet connection. I do spend a lot of time at the library whenever I do that. I was doing a lot. I had Lobbyvoice online as a website last April for several months, but it became too onerous to try to go into the library every time. So if I had someone to, had a positive internet connection and could sort of mind that end of it, that would be a big deal. And then I think what I need is help with the front end, which is a very simple process actually. And I'm thinking a foundation for a mobile app. Foundation is an open source project that's on GitHub. I have a GitHub account. I haven't got it all set up. I'm going to be publishing the Lobbyvoice white paper on the GitHub soon, and that'll be under Lobbyvoice. So right now, just getting us to the point where maybe we can get crowd funded or do a crowd sale, and I think I might do something like that either through because Ethereum, the Frontier Network actually have the ability to do a crowd sale. And my interest for Lobbyvoice is to not really be, I would like to remain involved with Lobbyvoice long enough to see it to the point where it could be in the better hands than me. Because honestly, I don't give it justice. If you know what I mean. I'm not a whiz programmer or anything like that. I could barely do Flash on my Mac. So.
Well, to go completely left field, and that was something you mentioned earlier on when we, in this conversation, you mentioned that when I asked you about where you've been living, and you've been mostly in Colorado, but you did mention Peru. So what's your lingering thoughts on Peru? I only mention this because I've been, I've had the good fortune to live in Argentina. I lived in Venezuela for a bit, so it's a kind of part of the world I know sort of kind of quite well. So what's your lingering thoughts? What was your lingering memories of Peru?
I went to Peru outside of a divorce, so I was just sort of trying to get away for a little while and get a different perspective. But when I went down there, I spent about 2 months in Peru, and I traveled all the way to Bolivia. I went to Largo Titicaca and Machu Picchu. I went and saw the pink dolphins in the Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And traveled around. I spent some time in Lima. I met some good people in Lima, but I didn't really talk to a lot of people. I spent a lot of the time just I hiked on the Andes for about 40 miles, and yeah, it was a solace time for me when I was in Peru. But the main lingering thought was just, wow, how much poorer people lived in Peru than in the United States, and there was a real culture shock for me, and I started to realize, and you see things on the TV, and being an American, it's kind of a disgusting thing in a lot of respect, because you're insulated from a lot of things in the world, and so I spent time traveling in places probably they weren't vacation places. The places I went, they were really poor villages, and Lima was probably the fanciest place I stayed when I was there. But it was just an eye opener. It made me, when I went back to the States, I spent a couple of years on several different reservations across the United States, and trying to reconnect with that part of humanity, with that part of my humanity, I think.
Now, I have to ask you this because I had a very dear friend of mine when I lived in Argentina, and he'd been up to Mantu Picchu in literally just after they literally found it. I mean, he was one of the, not the first, I'm not saying the first but maybe a couple of years after. He was, it was a real strive and an effort, and he had some great photos, and he told some great tales, and hacking his way through. Now, obviously, skip forward to here we are, when you went there. I mean, what was it like now? I mean, again, because I have dystopic thoughts about just being full of tourists, and you can always drive up to it, and I is it how where in those two gauges is it actually now, would you say?
I had to pay $200 to get into Machu Picchu. I was told it was free. I was told there wouldn't be very many people there. I had to go through a line of it's probably 300 people, tourists that day. I was supposed to go check out the hot springs that's next to the Machu Picchu area, and it was loaded with probably 1,000 people. And so it was nothing like I thought it would be like. It was sort of a circus act. I was really impressed with I'm a Mason. I've done masonry for a lot of my life when I was younger, and still to this day to make some of the ends meet. But I was really impressed with the stonework when I was in Machu Picchu. It was quite amazing. The joinery between stones, and just how, I mean, everything was done with. They didn't have steel tools. They didn't have all this stuff to build that. But it was quite amazing. despite the Disneyland effect with all the tourists and people selling stuff, and when I went, it was definitely not how it was explained to me. It was explained to me a lot different. Like you said, there wasn't very many people, and it wasn't that popular, but it was pretty popular when I went. So.
Well, again, while we're just here, and that's something else. Again, we can put a flagpole with it, and that's when we come back on another conversation, another podcast. But again, the whole I've seen some again, not in Peru and stuff, but even in Venezuela, in the Amazon, I saw some of that stonework, and again, that's another conversation. Put it that way, because I do think at certain points in our history as mankind, we've had access to certain technologies. That's all I'm going to say. I don't think it's alien. I just think that I've personally, just as my little, put my my little flag on this stone before we ever go back to it. I think a lot of that was sonic. I think they had sonic technology. I think they had ability to use frequencies and stuff like this, because but anyway, that's another one. But you went through all that time, and I have to sort of mention it because it was. Did you not get hit any by malaria or any sort of bug fevers and sickness and stuff? Because I mean, it's the first thing that people always ask me, like, "Oh, you lived in the jungle for like 18 months," and I was like, "Yeah, actually, I got actually fine." I mean, I got malaria once, and that was ironically just after some tourists had been down, and they brought it down with them. So, again, did you manage to get through the whole kind of adventure without being, dengue fever, yellow fever, malaria, all the other.
I did because I was quite nervous when I went. I didn't trust to eat anything. I brought my own food. I don't know how I was able to get my own food there. I had a backpack that was gigantic, and it weighed 60 pounds. And I ended up I had everything in there. I was planning on hiking the Andes for the whole time. I was planning on just being in the outback, but I didn't end up doing that. I hiked for a little while. But yeah, I ended up having this gigantic backpack that was the hugest pain in the butt. And I had, camp stove. I had, and the most amazing camp stove that would burn any fuel on earth and could burn it 8 meters high, 8,000 meters high or whatever. So I had all this crazy stuff that I brought with me that I ended up trading to little Indian people all over the place, for things like coca leaves and stuff like that. I remember I did that. I traded. I had this little stove that I never used once. I think I used it to boil some tea, but I ended up, just not hardly eating. I fasted most of the time, and I drank water that I purified. I was totally nervous about everything until the end. I started getting a little bit more used to it, and there was some certain foods. I spent the end of the trip in Lima with some friends, and they took me to and fed me a really good food while I was there. But yeah, it was just a weird experience for me. It was I call it my pilgrimage. That was where I give up all my worldly possessions and and leave the materialism behind, and just try to go exist without much at all, and see what I could see, and communicate in any way I could. At the time, I spoke very little Spanish, and most of the places that I was in, people didn't speak the dialect that I was in anyway. It was either it was either the native language, or it was a combination between that and Spanish, or there was the Castilian Spanish, or the Peruvian Spanish. It was just, I couldn't hardly communicate while I was there, except for very broken. And so for me, it was a very solace thing of humility and finding my humanity, and sort of emerging, sort of a chrysalis, if you will.
Yep. Well, I think that you just given the very zen of what the whole real traveling experiences are like. You do when you just gave it then in a very literal form. I mean, the amount of times. I swap Lima for Caracas. When I used to go back into Caracas every now and again when we used to live in Venezuela, and you see all, not many, because Caracas is even less than Lima, but you see, like you say, all the backpacks, and you think instantly, you just arrived. And by the time they leave, they're just leaving, you know, with just like nothing on them and stuff like that. I think that's the very essence of almost a lesson of life, really. That just don't. I mean, I think it is a real lesson of life. You know, that you can get weighed down by all the shit you carry around you. That's not necessary, and it might be great. Yeah, you got all the shiny shit around you, but like we were talking about earlier on, you can't take any of it with you. But I think one of the things that, again, it just taps into what you just said. Then one of the things that one of my abiding memories of living in, particularly Venezuela, was watching, because we lived on the beach and, you know, away from, you know, which I think was brilliant. It was away from all authorities. We had this perfect little experiment of people just, you know, how they're going to react to themselves. But one of the things that the abiding memories of it all was watching the kids under 8, under 9s, how they would innovate. Like you said, were you saying about your carpentry skill? How, you know, they would go from just having just one little tool, and they would, you know, I saw them, this is no exaggeration, in a space of 2 weeks, they had chiseled out, first of all, they had worked out a catapult, and then within 2 weeks, that catapult had been you know, literally by process of innovation and just chipping away, was literally a gun. You know, it fired little stones, and it was a little elastic, little pelted up, and they had and I thought, this is absolutely amazing. This is what I'm trying to say. Even the kids in the middle of the jungle, like you say, have no communication skills with us in the outside world, wouldn't know who Ronald Reagan is, or wouldn't have any idea who Bill Gates is. Those kids have got the innovation power and the capacity to create, and that is what's always inspired me. And when people say, oh, but like I said earlier, oh, I'm scared of the future, and it's like, well, I'm sorry, but I've seen kids in the middle of the jungle being creative, and they've used their nous and their gumption. So you, with your, you know, oh, I can't create in the world. Well, come on. Those are the kind of people, man, like you're just saying then, who need to be taken out, dumped in the middle of the jungle, and told, right, okay, there's your $50. Now you've got to get back to Lima.
Well, what we really need to do with all the folks that are having a difficulty is to retain and retrain, brother.
Exactly, my man. Well, look. Like I say, man, you know, I mean, it's nearing, you know, 2:00 in the morning for me over here, and we've given it a good 2 hours. So, like I said, we put plenty of flag posts and plenty of stones all over the place to return to in many conversations. As I said to you before we went live. Anytime you're welcome on here, and I think we've kind of skimmed upon certain parts, and there's so much more we could talk about. But like, you know, it's been an absolute enlightening experience tonight, my friend, and I think I can say that truly, because I think it's always good to meet like-minded people. Well, when you have a kind of experience and you've learned some of the stuff I have tonight, so, you know, I've learned about Machu Picchu. That's one thing that's enlightened me tonight, and I'm so man, before we sort of do finish this off, there's a couple of things. What are your plans for any particular plans for New Year? How's it celebrated in Colorado?
Well, we typically take it pretty easy. We call all the national holidays, we call those the amateur night. That's when all the police are out and busting everybody. So we tend not to go out those nights, you know. We may have a private party to go to. We have pretty much everything we need where we live. We've got a kegerator, beer on tap. So anytime you're in Colorado, stop by and have a beer.
Well, I've said this to many occasions. I mean, I definitely want to get to the States at some point, and I think, other than a couple of people who are dear friends of mine, I have to go and see first. Colorado has to be it, because this is, for years people have said this to me, and this is why I say this. I've had this maybe 10 years. Every American I ever meet, the minute they get to know me for about an hour, they're saying, Tim, you know, you want to go to Colorado. You would love it in Colorado. And that was for years and years and years. So I don't know what it is about Colorado, particularly that they think I'm going to like. But the more I kind of learn about Colorado, that's why it's very high on my list. So if that offer's there, my friend, you may one day turn up and I'll be stood there.
Well, you won't be the first to travel halfway across the world to come visit.
We can understand, my friend, as I'm saying. But like I say, It's been an absolute pleasure tonight, my friend. And like I said, we'll maybe get you back on early in the new year, and we can talk more about Lobbyvoice and Wiki Being and stuff. Because, like I say, we scratched on a few issues tonight, but there's a lot more we can talk about. So, well, man, for myself over here in Scotland, and it's cold and it's dark and it's wet over here, and in Colorado, I want to say life is people.
Tim, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
No, my friend. Perfect. Life is people.